Hello everybody, how are you today? This is SCRR, or SCRR, whichever is easier for you to remember. It stands for Scott's Comics Retro Review, which I get it, it's a mouthful, no worries. That's one of the reasons why I'm just giving the initials. Hopefully that will help you out with it and remembering. And anyway, this channel, what it's here for, this channel is here to, if you happen to want to get into comics, to read some comics, I'm going to offer some suggestions with my channel. And it's also, if you haven't, if you do read comics and you haven't read the one that I happen to be reviewing, then I encourage you and suggest that you go ahead and take a view of them, because I'm only picking up stuff that I like. My first 3 videos, I covered what many consider the greatest year in comics, 1986, and I took 3 books from that year that is the reason people consider it the greatest year in comics. And now what I'm going to do is go to the book that actually got me collecting comics. Now, I had always been reading. I'd read everything all the time. I got into comic books, however, through watching TV, cartoons, you know. Also Adam West Batman and George Reeves Superman. And then there were cartoons like the Superman Batman Adventure Hour, which was before Super Friends, and Spider-Man. He had a series in the late 60s. And Marvel had the Marvel Action Hour, I think it was called, where they showed 3 or 4 of the heroes. In either case, I was always reading newspapers, the comic section in the newspaper. And my dad worked for the airlines. He used to clean the planes when he started out. And what he did was, he would go to the Lost and Found, and anything that was there over 30 days, he would bring the comic books home for us. And we would go ahead and read them. So that's kind of my entryway into comic books. Then once I started getting an allowance, me and my brothers would go to the store and we'd pick out some comics to read. And what we did was, one person would buy one book, and then the others couldn't buy that book. So then the next person would buy a book, and the others couldn't buy it. So that way we would be able to read each other's comics, and we would have more comics for the least amount of money. Well, my younger brother picked this book up. And I tried to get him, once I saw the cover, I tried to get him to let me buy it, but he wouldn't. And when we got home, we all read this, and I was truly captivated. It's written and drawn by Jack Kirby. And Jack Kirby is a guy who I'm going to do many stories, many videos on. For those who don't know, he got into the comic book industry when the comic book industry was very young. He helped redefine it. He was a trailblazer. And then there came a certain point when comics were dying and kind of being revived again. And Stan Lee went back into the Marvel offices. They weren't called Marvel yet, and teamed up with Stan Lee, and then helped co-create the whole Marvel universe, most of the whole Marvel universe. In either case, this is after he helped co-create the Marvel Universe. He left Marvel once again and went back to DC, and this was one of his projects that he had there. And it's kind of a ripoff of Planet of the Apes, but there's Kirby's variation on it. So it's not what you're thinking if you're thinking it's just the Planet of the Apes, but I do believe that's why my brother picked it up. It does say Last Boy on Earth. There's an ape on the cover, and he's tied to the car being shot at. In either case, it opens up with with Kamandi, and he's being held up by gangsters who are robbing him, and he ends up going with them to the town of Chicago. The apes are on his trail, and it turns out to be Chicago in the 1920s, during the Roaring '20s, when Prohibition was in effect and gangsters were running rampant in Chicago. And it was such a fun read. As a kid, it really spoke to me. The book came out in 1974, which means I was probably about 9 years old at the time. And it had back then they had what was known as the Comics Code Authority, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But in either case, that basically means that it's okay for kids to pick up. The other three books that I reviewed, not so much. Not that there was anything in there, but I don't think kids would get anything out of it. At least not what we adults would get out of it. The Batman maybe, but it is ultra violent. In either case, this one definitely for kids if you want to buy a book for kids to read. Mostly it's a boy's adventure. I ended up going back the next week, or a couple of weeks after that, I don't remember. And me and my brothers, and we were buying more comics, and I saw this, and next to it I saw this one, or maybe not next to it, maybe it was somewhere else, but it says You're Leaving Chicago. And I said, wait a minute, because this one ended on a cliffhanger. And now it's saying he's left Chicago, and I'm going, could it be directly after? And I picked up the book, and I saw that, yeah, it was picking up right where the other one left. I had never seen that before. I was 9 years old, and usually you just go in there, you just pick up a book and you read it. You buy it and you read it. But this was the first time I saw it. I noticed that this is 19 and this is number 20. And that was the first time it occurred to me that I can get books in numerical order, one after the other. So I had to learn how to, but I eventually started collecting. But this was the series that started it. And Jack Kirby was the man that began all that. Anyway, I did end up getting the whole series. Now I want to make this clear. This is not the original series that I bought that came off the newsstand. This is not the initial issue. All that stuff is long gone. I had to go back and rebuy it. It's very rare that I would do that, but this book does hold sentimental value for me. And this is not something that I would expect anyone to just go back and buy like that. So what I'm going to offer to you is two different products for you to take a look at. One is called the Kamandi Archives. There's very few times that if I have a copy or an issue of something that I'll buy it again. In the case of these individual books, I didn't actually have the whole batch when these came out. I had a couple of spot issues. And this was, it's called Kamandi Archives. It's issues 1 and 2. It's a hardcover edition, and they printed on a high quality paper with great colors. The colors really shine out through this. And it's basically the same thing, except it goes up to issue 20. The two issues that I started at, 19 and 20, it ends at number 20 with Archives Volume number 2. I never saw a Kamandi number 3 come out, even though Jack Kirby kept working on it. But I believe that's because DC kind of suspended their archives, and I will provide a link down below for it. But again, this is the kind of book that you would put on your bookcase, for that. And a couple of years after that, so I have all these issues 3 times. Yes, it's true. So after that, what DC did was they released what they call an omnibus, which means it's got everything. It's all inclusive. And there's volume 1 and volume 2 that's out. Now, as you could see, the DC logo has changed, and they've actually even changed the cover. So if you went to buy this omnibus, you won't get these covers. It'll be slightly different. They're going to change it around. I didn't just go out and rebuy the omnibus again because, how many times am I got to rebuy this? But this one's a little different with the front cover. The paper is not as it's a thinner paper, and it doesn't have any kind of gloss to it. So while the colors are still good, they don't pop out like they do with the archive editions. But it covers everything. It goes past issue number 20. It goes to the very last issue that Jack Kirby drew. Jack Kirby, he stopped writing at one point, and he stopped being the editor. He stopped writing and he stopped being the editor It was right after this one, I believe. Yeah, he wrote and drew, you know, for a while, and then he stopped writing it, and it only got to the point where he was only drawing it, and then he left the book. But this is every issue that he drew in this omnibus, in these 2 issues of the omnibus. So I hope you liked the video. If you like it, please like, subscribe, and share. Next to the subscribe button, there's a little bell notification. Hit that icon so you can get a notification every time I release a video. You may or may not know about these already. I've been digging kind of older, so if you're a younger reader, you may not have gotten these or read them, but it's good stuff. It's stuff that's worth checking out. For those of you who are older, who know what I'm talking about but haven't read the videos, I still think you should subscribe, because I'll probably come up with something that you may not have heard of. I've been reading a lot for a long time. In either case, if you like these books, if you wanted to get either the omnibus editions or the archive editions, I do have some links down below in the description box. Go ahead and check those out. Anyway, this is SCRR or SCRR, whichever way you want to remember it. Stands for Scott's Comics Retro Review. I hope you have a great day.